Please meet me on the Etherpad and I'll be right with you. I actually realized I couldn't use the Wi-Fi at the hotel, so all the little things that I wanted to post and stuff, I wasn't able to do, so I'm doing it now. So I just copied pasted. Yeah, so I haven't been able to give you the links to more Pandas resources and Python programming resources in general. So line 116 of the Etherpad, but I'll do it later at some point today. And so please meet me at line 119 of the Etherpad, and we're going to get started with version control with Git. And for this, I'm suggesting that we start from a Python script. So since I wasn't able to do things online last night or early this morning, I'm thinking about reusing the scripts we came up with last time I taught a software carpentry workshop, which was in New York in March. So the scenario is the following. Remember, so yesterday we got acquainted with the Jupyter Notebook, and we were able to write some Python code in it and execute it. And notably, we ended by making a plot. Oh yeah, sorry, I'll speak in the mic in just a bit, but I'm not ready yet. And we're happy with that plot. At least it's a starting point. Maybe it's not like the publication version, but we want to start, showing it to our advisor, our lab mate, someone. So we'll want like a backup system for it and a version control system for it. So please, here's the Jupyter Notebook. Yes, so I'll have to update all these lines, but it's the Jupyter Notebook that I wrote with the students of last March at NYU. And I suggest that you download a Python script that creates a little plot, and I'll be with you in just a bit. So if you're not able to download the .py file, please ask for help.
Audrey, what's the keynote?
What? Yeah, I don't know when this is. No. The problem is that we're missing tables and spots, but typically, especially for that lesson, it's very useful when some helpers are on the Etherpad and taking notes to help the students and stuff. Grazie. Così. Hello, remote people. Welcome back to the Software Carpentry Workshop. This is day 2. Please find us on the Etherpad, line 119. There are some setup instructions for you. So, as I was saying in the room, what you will read is not exactly accurate because I just copied pasted it from a former workshop, I taught at NYU in March. So it's not exactly true that this is the notebook we did. We did another notebook with you guys yesterday, but you know, I'll update the notes accordingly. This is because I realized I couldn't work. I couldn't use the Wi-Fi at the hotel last night. So everything I wanted to update and share with you guys I couldn't do, but we'll make up for it, don't worry. So in spirit, we're now acquainted with Python. We're able to write some code that generates a plot. And a plot, as you know, is like typically the way you share a scientific result, a scientific, insight. So in this case, I suggest that we start from a Python program. So as we have seen, this is a text file that ends with .py by convention, and that can be executed by running Python, name of the file .py. In this case, that could be, like the content of a code cell that we had in our Jupyter notebook. We just copied, pasted, into Nano and saved it as here min.max.py. If you want to get all the content, all the code that you have in your notebook as a Python program, you can do it from the interface as well, actually. So let me show you. If I launch the Jupyter notebook like I did yesterday. And I'm surprised nobody asked, how do you exit the Jupyter notebook? Because we didn't see it together and no one seemed to have trouble with that. So, there's the server running behind and the web interface here. So when I have a notebook here, so I'll just write one line of code in this case. If I save this notebook, then I can download it as a Python program. So I'll just save it, and let's say I'm done with the Jupyter notebook. I could shut it down here, so the kernel is not running anymore for this notebook. And here, how do I end this process? Do people know? Yeah, I guess it depends. So in my case, I do Control C, sorry. And then I'm prompted for this question, no answer. Oh, wow, there's a deadline. So I say, yes, I want to shut it down. Oh, no, it resumed because I didn't. OK, C, yes. And now, what are my latest? So yeah, I hadn't renamed the notebook, so it kept its default title, untitled.ipynb. And if I look at the script version, I see that the equivalent of like the code cell numbering is turned into comments. So yeah, maybe we didn't highlight this point yesterday, but maybe you've noticed that comments in Python start with the pound key, the hashtag sign, and then here is your Python code. So I don't need this file right now. I'll just remove it. I'll just remove it. OK. So yeah, it might be interesting. As much as the notebook is an amazing tool to explore a data set and to prototype maybe some figures that you will want to share, etc. Once you have something that's running and that you want to maybe execute on larger data sets, etc., and maybe, I'm anticipating what you guys will study in the HPC context with the next classes that you have coming up as part of this school. We will not be a part of it anymore, but I'm trying to frame the the speech in more general terms. You will want to have a Python script as opposed to a Jupyter notebook so that you can run it through the command line. So exactly like this, Python and so in this case, I'll show you the code. So does everyone have this file, min-max.py, locally on their computers? If you don't have it, ask for help right now with a red sticky note. So on your machines, you will not be able to run this because you will be missing the data file that it's reading from. But I will give you the data file if you want to be able to run it. I lost the mic. Yeah, and I want to remind people who are not in the room that they can always ask for help over the Etherpad. And if I don't see it in the chat, please someone tell me, if someone is in the Etherpad asking for help. Please put a green sticky up once you have this py file in your downloads, because I guess by default that's where it saves for you too, so that I have an idea I can keep going. Yes, but I said that for now. I can tell you right now, but we're not. The purpose is not to run the script. I said if Python the file doesn't work for you, it's normal. I mean, it's just to have. We just want to have the Python script. We're not running it, even though. But if I'll share it with you. It's not a secret, so. Yes. So line 127 of the 126 of the Etherpad. Yeah, here. So I also linked to the data files. Like if you have spare time and you're ahead of your classmates, please go ahead. But right, it's just a pretext. It's again, normally I would have made something for you that works on our data set from yesterday, but I didn't have the internet, so I couldn't make it. Yeah, and don't use wget if you're on Windows, right? So just copy paste or okay, just copy paste the file. So yes. Of course, yeah. But if you are ahead of time, you can download the CSV if you're interested. I put the link at line 133. But right now, that's not what we're doing. We're going to focus on backing up the script. So the focus is not on running the script. Yeah. Okay, so the script lives here. That's the link on line 126. You know, you just copy paste it into a text editor. You go like raw to have this view.
Yeah, sure. There instead.
Okay, so I'll consider that everyone has copied pasted these lines of code into a .py file. Okay, that should not be too difficult, right? You don't need a specific setup to do this. Okay, so I'm in my downloads folder, and I have this Python program. So I can run it because I have the corresponding data file. You cannot run it at the moment, but you know, if you feel like running it, we can do it during the break, whatever. In spirit, what I want to emphasize is that I have a figure that's kind of precious because it's the way I communicate my scientific results, my scientific insights. So I want to make sure that I back up this script, and I'm able, if I make changes to it, I'm able to go back to an earlier version if I break something or if my advisor changes their mind, etc. So the motivating scenario for this lesson, wait, where is this like funny thing? Yeah, so maybe that has looked like your life as a grad student sometimes, where, okay, you finished writing something, your professor goes through it, so of course you have to make corrections, and then there's an infinite loop, there are still additional comments that you have to address, etc., etc. And then your file name becomes very long and reflects your frustration a bit. And we want to do better than this, basically. So we don't want to take care of this like naming convention, you know, should I have document 1, document 2, document 3, or add the date to it maybe. We want to use a system that will take care of this. So that's called the version control system. And in particular, we're going to use a distributed version control system, which means that, yeah, it's not centralized. It doesn't live in just one place, but like conceptually, that doesn't really matter for the purposes that we're teaching right now. And this distributed version control system is called Git, and it's extremely popular in the world of software development, and it's now getting more popular in traditional academic research as well. And it's a great thing to be able to track the changes that you make to your code. And by extension, you probably use LaTeX to write papers and stuff like that. So that's plain text. So you can also version control it with Git. So so we're going to create a new directory where we're going to copy this script that we're maybe not fully happy with, but it's a starting point. So what could I name it? And so inflammation will, yeah, because the data that we're representing here is like supposed to represent inflammation. So maybe to be clean, you want to make a directory called git lesson on the desktop. I don't know if it's. You will probably delete these things afterwards, but okay, let's go and move there. We've done this yesterday. And I'll make a directory called inflammation, I said. I was thinking of calling it maybe inflammation analysis, but let's say what you do all day is analyzing data, so maybe that's we can discard what's trivial. And in inflammation, we're going to copy this script that we just downloaded. Okay. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Is that good? And since, unfortunately, I cannot draw on the board, I will point to figures that are already made, so I'll have to find them. No, but I cannot. I'm not allowed. Yeah, yeah, because of the streaming. So let me. I want to find the diagram. Yeah. Okay. I'll go for this. But thank you for offering. So inflammation is a directory. We already know what a directory is. It can contain files and subfolders. But now we're going to equip this directory with Git. So we're not going to just have files in it. We're going to say, okay, I want to keep track of the changes that those files undergo as I edit them. So for this, we're going to initialize a so-called Git repository. So the repository will be this directory equipped with the tracking system. So with all the history, so I mean right now there's no history, we're just starting, it's the initial point, but we want to initialize this. Oops. So the command we use is git init, this current directory. Does that work for everyone? Normally you have git installed. We're going to do it now. Yeah. Yeah, because you cannot commit. Yeah. or even author a change, but we're going to get there. Oh my God, this is so inconvenient. Well, I want my notes, but since they're on my... yeah, sure. Please, I think that would be easier. No, yeah, if you just visit this URL, and I'll just follow on your screen.
Okay.
Wait,
Sorry.
I need to check the...
Okay, what's the date?
18/03/06.
306
And
NYU.
NYU, yes, thank you. Okay, I should give up.
How far down?
It's called version control with Git.
Here?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Can I bring it closer?
Yeah, move where you want to move.
Okay, thanks. Oops. So now we will want to configure Git to tell the system who we are, so that when we author changes, the system will know that a change was made on that day at that time by this person and for that purpose. All this, and you can think of it as metadata, right? So there's going to be a change in your code, and it's going to be associated with like the author of that change, the timestamp, etc. So I'm actually not going to run the command myself because I'm already configured globally, but you're going to do it for real. So git config global. You're going to type here your name for real. So and enter. And then you're going to associate an email for it. So yeah, of course, later on or at home, you can always overwrite all this config. Also here, we're configuring globally, so it means that on your machines right now, when we create a new repository, when you create a new repository on your own, all these will apply. So, but in real life, or I don't know if you work on the side, maybe there's like a repository where you want to be known as your corporate email, for example, and another repository. So of course, all this can be done. And in that case, we would not use the global flag when we configure. But for now, we're gonna go for the simplest and broadest version at the same time. But be aware that if you're really hesitating about which email to use, it doesn't matter too much because you can always change it later. Actually, after the break, when we so push, I will explain what push means, don't worry, but when we push things online, you can make sure that your email is not visible publicly, etc. So we'll do all this. So once you have saved your name, then you will do the same for, we'll specify your email. Then oh, actually, yeah, maybe I will just copy paste this into the Etherpad because so that since I'm not running them myself. So line 135 of the Etherpad. And at the end, please run git config -- list to check that you have a bunch of things specified. So in my case, that's my full name, the user email that I use usually as a committer. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't introduce new words like this, but we'll see what it is in just a bit. So please place a green sticky up when you have something that, of course it's a different output for you, but when you have configured Git for you on your system, so that I can go ahead. No. And you also have the help flag if you needed to look something up about Git configuration and you didn't have a web browser with a functioning internet connection to look it up. By the way, so if you run this, you can type Q to quit like it says at the bottom, right? So you don't have to remain stuck.
Questo ti servirà dopo perché le repository possono essere poi delocalizzate su un server remoto. Quindi questa cosa serve ad associare la tua email con un account che fai sui server. È per questo? Sì.
Okay, so now we're going to run another Git command that's going to be your best friend, git status. When you don't know where you're at, what to do, run git status. That's the best thing you should do. So as the name says, that gives you information about the status of your versioning. So we're not going to talk about branches in this lesson. You can learn about it in the future. So we'll only use the default branch called master. And Git tells us that we have untracked files, and that if we want them, if we want to start tracking them, we should use git add and the file name. So indeed, we haven't told Git what to track yet, and what we want to track is this Python script. So as the message says, we're going to use the command git add mean max. And that's going to bring this file into the so-called staging area. So that's where, sorry, I'm going to switch screens a bit to illustrate this. What happens is that you're in the working directory, you're making work, and then you decide that you're happy with where things are at. So you're going to decide what goes into the staging area. In this case, one file. Because it could be that maybe you're making changes on different files, but some files are changes are as side effects, but you want to focus on saying, okay, here I added some styling information. So there's an extra line of styling in your Python script, just like we did yesterday when we specified the ggplot style. So you want to add the file that contains the style changes to the staging area, even if there are other changes going on, but they correspond to something else. So only the file that contains the changes about style you want to bring to the staging area. And then you want to run git commit to say, okay, that's like a set of changes, so a change set that I want to save. And this representation of stacks is this idea that, you know, I start from an initial state, I add a layer of change sets and another layer, and this piles up. And, you know, even if we only see this and we only look at this, really all this stack is contained, but we don't need to like worry about it unless we, you know, explicitly want to go back to it. But Git is doing it for us. So it's better to draw on the board, I think. But so now if I run git status, which you never run too often, honestly, don't hesitate to run it. Now I have more information, and I don't know if you have the same coloring as I do, probably not. It depends on your operating system and your configuration, etc. But, you know, what was, you know, information about untracked files in red, I now have, oh, that some changes are ready to be committed. And indeed, so it's like I have decided that min-max.py had to go in the staging area. And now I'm going to take a snapshot of that state to commit it. So to create the first layer in that like stacking pile. So git commit. And I'm going to use the m flag to add a message. Write plotting script. Because I have written a plotting script. Then there are conventions. So some people would write writing plotting script, the gerund, or would write maybe wrote plotting script because it's in the past. I like the convention. I use the convention usually of using the imperative. So I say, you know, write, add, include. Just be consistent in your project. Then it's nicer to read, because then once you have many stacks, and we'll see it in a bit, then it's like a story. So now git status, on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean. And the way to see these stacks, so there's going to be only one for now, is with the git log command. Yeah, so like if some, I don't know, are you on the Etherpad, Michele? Yes. So maybe you can write git status and git log for people. So yes. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so when you print out, when you look at the output of git log, you see all these important pieces of information that I earlier referred to as metadata, because you have the author, that should be yourself, the date, just a moment ago, the description of the change, and a commit ID here. And so I can select it, copy paste it, and if I write git show, that will give me the content of the change set exactly. So in this case, this change set, or this commit, consists of the addition of all these lines in this file. So, well, we started from nothing, and we are now with a py file that contains all these lines. But as you have noticed, there is a problem with this script, which is that it's not running because you don't have the data file. So I think it's always good practice to document that. So now we're going to edit this file and add a warning for ourselves to be like, okay, fix me. You know, you need to provide or point to the data file. So let's open a text editor. And I would write fix me, provide data file. And now if I run git status, again, you can never run it too much. It will always help you figure out where you're at. I have this information that this file was modified. And indeed it was. And if I want to know specifically how it was modified, I run git diff. Oh, and I see that the change consists in the addition of this line at that line, so right above data equals. Oh, someone needs help, I think. So if I want to add this change, what do I run? I want to save this change. Not directly. So before committing something, you have to decide what's in the staging area, and that's where you take the snapshot. So it's this diagram here. Once you've worked on your files, you've made changes, then you decide what goes into the staging area first. So git add, yeah. So in this case, there's only one file, but also we're not going to do it in this lesson, but just so you are aware of it, git really works at the line level. So it might be that really maybe I make changes at the very top of my file. For example, I add some lines of comments to document what I'm doing. And at the very end, I add a savefig line to save that file as a PNG. And maybe they're not completely related conceptually. So I want to have a change set that corresponds to the documentation and a change set that corresponds to saving a plot. Well, actually, in Git, you can do this. So you could git add only those top lines and then only those bottom lines. But it's a bit complex for now. So, but just so you're aware of it, that really Git works at the line level and not the file level. So now git status, as usual. So now these modifications are ready to be committed. So we're ready to make that new layer in the stack. If I run git log, just to check, I still have just one commit though, right? So now if I make my second commit, how do I do it? I will say warn or about missing data file. So now git status. I have a working tree clean, so my working directory is no different from the last time I committed, the last time I committed being just now. And if I run git log, now I have two layers. So I have the first one, which is still always, if I want to be reminded of what I did in the first part of this lesson, I can always look it up like this. Okay, that was the original change set. And the most recent one, git show, consisted in just the addition of one line. So I think it's easy enough with my mouse to select the full commit ID like this. But be aware that actually the first few digits are enough to identify it. So these IDs are unique, and they're generated by typical algorithms for generating unique IDs. So I could type git show and 0f. So in your case, it will not be 0f, right? It will be something else. But you can type the first few digits, and that should be enough, yeah, to retrieve it. So you can either use the full commit ID or the beginning of it. So now your turn. I'll ask you to, so what changes could we do for now in the same file? Oh, okay. I'll ask you to please change the fig size. So right now you see that it's specified as 10.0 by 3.0. Please make it, I don't know, 10 by 4, for example, instead of 10 by 3. So make the edit in the file, and then add the file to the staging area because that's the change that we want to save. And then create that third layer in the stack, and then show me the output of your git log. Maybe yeah, show also the git diff before adding to the staging area.
Everyone who's getting lost, we're writing a short summary on the Etherpad, okay, with all the commands that are discussing.
Yeah, and really in your life, so again, you don't need to remember anything by heart, but you will just remember them by practicing. Well, git init, okay, you do it just once for the project. You want to be aware of git status, of git diff, git add and git commit, and you know, in your day-to-day, that will be enough for local work. We're going to see other commands when we send all these changes and their history online. But really, git status, git log, git diff, git add, git commit. For real, there are many, many more commands, but in your day-to-day, you shouldn't need them.
My slides
yes.
So I can read them on my phone.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know what I'm going to do later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Okay, can someone tell me how should I proceed? And I'll type what I'm told. So where do I start? At the moment, I have a clean working directory. So like in the morning, you fire up your setup, etc., and you run git status. You know you haven't started working because you know things are still the way they were last time you committed. So yesterday, let's say. How do I proceed? Yeah, so nano, yeah. And then I said I was going to edit this line, right? Okay. Now I'll save it. Now what do I do? Yeah, I could, but I mean, I just want to be very, very careful. So what do I run before? Yes, git diff, or even git status first. Like again, you can never run git status too often. So git status. Oh, you know that something has happened, that you're not in a clean working directory anymore. But yeah, git diff. So okay, is this really the change that I wanted to make? Yeah, I'm happy with it. So now I can git add. Put it to the staging area. And now, so if I run git status, it's in green, so that's the changes that are ready to be committed. If I run git diff, there's no change because basically git diff, so that's where the black, git diff is the difference between here and there. Okay, can you see my mouse? So between here and there, you compare by using git diff. Actually, it might be interesting also to double check what's the difference between what's in the staging area, so not committed yet, and yeah, and the next commit. So for this, you have a flag. It's called so git diff staged, right? Yeah. So with the staged option, you know that you have already added this change set to the staging area, but you have not committed it yet. So between here and here, it's, you know, git add will display the difference, and between here and here, git diff stage will display the difference. So, okay, if I'm all good and confident, I can commit. Change figure size. Yeah, oh, actually, I should ask for, what did you write as a commit message? Because that's kind of important. What did you write? Okay, modify. So I said that I speak at the imperative, modify figure size. So there's even a whole culture about writing commit messages. So, you know, it's nicer to follow convention, to be consistent, to use short but descriptive explicit messages. And if you're not able to come up with a short descriptive message, actually that tells you that maybe your change set is too big or too small. So, you know, if it's too big, if you did like 10 things, you're not able to write it in a small message, and that tells you that you should have committed more frequently. You'll get used to it. But if you have done hardly nothing, well, or maybe it's not like it doesn't make a full entity. Yeah, so the idea is that a commit should represent a conceptual entity. So it's not a number of lines, it's not, but you know, it should be something that you can express in a simple sentence. And now if I run git log, well, if I go from the bottom up, I have a story. I know that I started by writing a plotting script. And then I added a warning about the missing data file. And then I modified the figure size. So now I'm going to add a README file, because so it's a bit of a pretext to introduce you to good practices. At the root of a repository, it's very nice to have a so-called README file, so that a person who just lands on that project has a starting point about what this is about. And for your future self, it's also like a very basic form of documentation. So let's start a file called README you could call it just readme or readme.txt. We'll call it readme.md for Markdown. We've seen some Markdown yesterday in the Jupyter notebook. Nano readme. And here, we're going to give it a title. So inflammation analysis. Okay, maybe let's be a little humble. And now, so what do you feel like running now? No, your reflex should be git status. Always. Because otherwise it's a bit too adventurous, no, let's just look at the status for now. And okay, we see that we have an untracked file. So when you create a new file, that's important to highlight, Git will not automatically track it. So you have to make the explicit conscious decision of tracking a new file. So do we want to track it or not? Yes, because that's like precisely, I said, the motivation behind a README is very much for sharing. I mean, of course, it could be sharing with yourself, but it's still. So we want to add the README file. And check the status again, because you can never do it too much. Also, git log, you can never do it too much. Still have my 3 commits. If I run git diff, what will I get? But we have added it, so actually, yeah, so there will be nothing, because it's already, since we have added it, it's here in the staging area. So these lines that are added actually will be displayed by git diff stage, which is the difference between what's not yet committed and what's in the staging area. So if I run git diff staged, oops, here I do have those like new lines in this file. We would have seen something if, for example, when I did, touch readme.md, and I had added at this stage, I would have done touch readme.md, git add. Then I would have written in nano, and then the git diff would have shown this. Okay. But since I immediately put it in the staging area with its lines, the git diff wouldn't output anything. Okay. Please commit yourself with a meaningful commit message. What is the suggestion from the classroom? Okay. Who wants to suggest a commit message? Actually, I would say this is a philosophical debate maybe, but I would say instead, no, just describe what you did, not why you did it, but what you did.
Okay.
But it's like passo carrabile actually means do not park, but it's expressed in a way like as if it's because some cars might go through, which is not even always the case. So this is something that really struck me as I moved to Italy, that instead of writing do not park, it says passo carrabile.
You can't park for 2 minutes.
So, which commit message? Well, I debate that a lot because in a way, I mean, that's definitely accurate, but I claim that when you visualize, and when we do this in a graphical user interface, a GUI, it will be even more clear that we'll see, you know, which files are modified, how they're modified, etc. I find that, you know, you already see that the README was added in the commit, but honestly, that's open to discussion. I'm not sure. So. But yeah, no. But sometimes when you make tiny changes, it's it's a bit hard to be creative and don't obsess yourself too much. But I would say start documenting project. Also because this way I convey the.
That conveys a very deeper level.
Documenting. And then when I run git log, I'm happy about that story unfolding.
So, just to be a pain.
Yeah.
When I look at this and you said I started documenting the project, it's like the vaguest thing I've ever heard. Just read the log. To me, that's vague. Right?
Yeah. No,
It's
actually.
totally philosophical.
When I said I wanted to convey a message, I meant actually I want to say that it's good to document. So
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't mean specifically for that. Yeah.
That is the vaguest thing I've ever seen in a while.
But just because I claim that the file edition of the README, you see especially in the GUI. But that's arguable, yeah. Okay, and now let's keep documenting the project. So README. So data is about data is plural actually. So please add a line in your markdown file, the README file. And now if I run git status, I should expect that my working tree is not clean. So indeed, there's something in red. Something was modified. Git diff shows this line addition. And let's say that I changed my mind. In the end, I don't think this line is super helpful, super relevant, or I want to make another one. So of course, in this case, it wouldn't be hard to just reopen the file and erase it and recover a clean slate. But more generally speaking, let's imagine it's like code where in the syntax you have commas and stuff. So you probably don't want to retouch this by hand. You just want to go back to where you were at. Then you run git checkout readme.md, and that would be actually enough to take readme back to the state it was at the head. So the head is the latest commit. So I'll just rerun git log. Git log is your list of commits, in this stacking schema. And the top is like the latest commit, and it's referred to as the head. So if you type git checkout, what was my file, readme.md, I will go back to the head, which was my README file with just the title, the level 1 heading, and one line of so-called documentation. I know it's a bit exaggerated to call it documentation, but not the second line of text. Actually, what's the syntax? Because if I wanted to specify head explicitly, okay. Does head go before or after README? It goes here, right? Yeah. It's just that if I don't specify it, it's there by default, but you know, it stands for this. So now, if I run git diff, it's empty again because README is like this again. And I think I do want to add the data file in the end so that you're able to run the script. So actually, in the Etherpad, please take a minute to, I think the Wi-Fi is good here, people. So line 133, if you visit this link, here download this archive, unzip it, and in the data folder you will find this, a CSV file called inflammation01. Please put your green sticky up once you have that CSV file at least somewhere, and then we'll just move it to the right place. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to use Vim, forget. I didn't want to confuse anyone, it's just that it's the text editor that I normally use, so sometimes I didn't do anything.
You can now go through and get out of Vim hell to everybody. One by one. Why would I quit?
No, thank you.
Se premi I vai in insert con il cursore prima, se sei in normal mode e vuoi andare col cursore dopo, premi A.
Okay, so now, just for the purpose of demonstration, more navigation in the history, I will ask you to make 2 sets of changes in the README file, because it's a text file, so we're not going to break any code, etc. Yes. Has someone had issues with getting the CSV file? If so, please call a helper and we'll help you right away. Otherwise, just move on to this other exercise. And I would like to do it in hiding, but I'll do it quickly afterwards. So that you get used to the local Git workflow. So you work locally on your machine, you make changes, git status, git diff, git add, git diff staged if you want to double check, git commit, and again work, git status, git diff, git add, git diff staged, git commit. And you'll know it all by heart very soon. Yes, I'm asking them to make 2 change sets so that we can, it's a pretext to navigate through more changes.
Stiamo pensando alla trasformazione. È quasi più elegante di quello di me. Diciamo proprio portabile. In potenza lo puoi portare.
Okay, so now you should have a longer story, so more layers in your history. So we did it just so we have like more than one commit in one file, in this case the README file, which is the safer to modify. Yeah, actually if I was to modify this file again, so README, and let's say I mistyped something, so I'll just save it. oops. Git status. Yeah, we'll do this in just a bit. Yeah, yeah. So actually, I'll just spend one more second on the famous Git status, because when you read the details, so we're familiar with Git adding a file to add the changes into the staging area. But we see that Git checkout the file will discard the changes in the working directory, which is what we did previously. So yeah, so checkout is a very widespread command in Git. It does many things, so it can get confusing. So that's why we're trying to build it one step at a time. But so if I want to discard what I just did, as we've seen, we can either say, bring it back to the head, or specify nothing, because by default the value here is the head, or even this syntax like the comment says. So at this point, status is clean again.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
So Git checkout works both before and after Git add.
What do you mean by works? Because it depends what you want to do. Right now, we're using it to bring README back to its state at the head.
Okay. So whatever, whether I did Git add or not.
Okay, so it's always better to work from a clean directory. So when you have Git added something, let's say, so you have stuff in the staging area, and you haven't committed yet, I would suggest you decide what you want to do. So do you actually want to commit those changes, or do you want to revert them? But yeah, that's a great question. So how do we, actually, it's something I Google all the time. So how do I remove changes that I've added to the staging area?
It tells you how to do it when you try to do it.
What?
When you do it, it tells you what to do. Right?
Oh yeah, right.
If you do it and Git status, it then tells you a way to get back.
Yeah. So okay. So let's do it. Actually, let's remake these. So let's write, something that I didn't actually mean to write. Oops. Control O, Control X. Okay. So I'm in that situation, so where the working directory is not clean, and I'll add it this time to address your question. So I'll add these changes. So now git diff will output nothing but git stage. I haven't committed it yet, but I want to remove it. So if I run git status, so I'll do git reset. So I'll unstage, so I'll remove it from the staging area first. So git reset head readme. So now I'm back to a non-clean working directory, right? So it's like those changes, but not staged yet. So I have undone the git add this way. So I take it, methodically in 2 steps. So I unadd first, if you like, and now I'm going to undo these things with, so what I've just learned, git checkout, head, readme. But with all that history that we have about the readme file, maybe we don't want to just go back to the last commit, but maybe we're interested in 2 commits ago, 3 commits ago, etc. So to do this, so first we can even use git diff with respect to, so this should output nothing. There's no difference. And to go back one commit to go, basically, you use this like tilde1 notation. 2 commits ago, you go like this, etc., etc. So maybe you get the sense that this command can be very useful when you're making small tweaks to a plotting script or code in general. Maybe you want to see what you have done. And now if you check out, now this is a tense moment for me because forget where it will take me, but we'll figure it out. If I go back 2 commits ago, okay, let's try it. Because, that might be a real use case. You want to go back 2 commits ago. So now, what's the status? Okay, this is modified. How exactly? Oh yeah, well, so that doesn't display diff because all this has been staged. All this is in the staging area. So, oops. Okay, yeah. So you need the staged flag to actually see the differences because when we're doing these checkout things, actually the action, if you like, where is my diagram, is happening between here and there. It's not happening between here and there.
So if you're nervous about checking out, git diff head and head -2 of the README, and you actually see the difference.
Yeah, what we just did, right?
But you can like
before doing the checkout, you do the diff, right? To see what it. Yeah. Oh, but now sorry. Before. Okay, so like here we had it here.
Yeah.
So you check what that difference exactly consists in. Because it's not like you remember by heart, oh, I really want to go back 2 commits ago. Before you actually do it, you're like, okay, what was it like 2 commits ago? It was the same, but without that addition. Yeah, indeed. And then you do the checkout. But now that I have already done it, of course, diff doesn't output anything anymore. And now I can really just decide if I want to indeed go back 2 commits ago, or maybe not. So now that I'm in, so maybe that documentation was not good. So I'm like, actually, for now at least, I should leave it at this. So now I'll commit that. Commit. So simplify or remove latest. And now git log, so I have an extra commit, the latest one, and I can see what it consists in. And it's indeed like the removal of these 2 change sets. I think now might be a good time to break because then we'll get set up with GitHub. Maybe I'll post something on the Etherpad so we can have coffee, but you can also. So let's.
Let's do coffee until 10:40.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So let's come back at 10:40. Yeah.
Are you going to do git ignores?
I wasn't sure, but do you think it's worth it? Okay, I'll do it then. Yeah.
Because particularly, like, say you have your information folder, right?
Yeah.
And you put data in there.
Yeah.
You normally don't want to track your data.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So
that's
good.
just a reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
No. Absolutely.
Move the data
Yeah.
in, say,
Yeah.
okay. Do I really want to store data? It's really big.
Yeah.
Potentially. No.
Right.
I can tell.
That's a good use. Yeah. Because I mean, I actually decided kind of on the fly to add the data file, but let's combine it with the git ignore. Yeah.
So
I might as well. Okay. Yeah.
Something and then say, okay.
Yes. Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's the good. Because I was like, with the IPy notebooks, I get to ignore the IPy and B checkpoints, of course.
Right.
But here I don't have them, so I was like,
Yeah.
do we need to get? Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll get to ignore the data
So it's a pretty
file.
useful thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And
Otherwise
it's
there's a bunch of
realistic.
stuff you don't want.
Yeah.
Like your stuff directory where you write random
Yeah.
notes to yourself. No one
Yeah.
needs to see that.
faster than expected.
Thanks for
Okay.
the double screen.
I borrowed yours, so.
No, ma anche aiutare è stato più facile del previsto. Mi ricordavo più cose di quanto credessi.
I'll have to change my SSH things into HTTPS so that I'm like them.
Guys.
But it's okay, yeah.
Oh, does it do it by default? Yes.
It,
It depends on how it's set up. Yeah,
yeah,
once you start adding SSH keys, it just goes, yeah, you want
yes,
to do this.
exactly, yes. So, yeah.
But it's also good to tell people, right? Because sometimes they
Yeah.
might actually have SSH. You can
No,
like, oh, look, I don't
absolutely.
want to do that. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so yeah. Maybe not everyone has a GitHub account actually.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to register them, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah. I
like
think
it's
it's,
tough.
yeah. But there's the privacy thing. It's just this thing I need to be careful with. It's the
Privacy thing?
yeah. So because I mean at least.
volta è stata applicata. Buona bozza di Brexit del Parlamento europeo è stata approvata dal Parlamento britannico.
Welcome back. So maybe you've seen on line 183 of the Etherpad that you're going to have to create a GitHub account if you don't have one already. I don't feel fully comfortable telling you that you have to create a GitHub account because after all, it's a commercial service. Oh, oops, what? Sorry. What's going on? Is it on? But
Ok.
is it there? Okay. Okay, line 182 here. Create an account on GitHub if you don't have one already. Yeah, so I'll let you do this. It should be quite straightforward. Yeah, I mean, GitHub is a private company, actually, that was acquired by Microsoft, so it's even worse. Feel free to set privacy settings that you prefer, and there's some information below for later. Yeah, personally, I don't really like using Microsoft products or services, but GitHub is so ubiquitous that you know, I work with it. I use it all the time. I have critical takes on this kind of de facto monopoly, but yeah, I think that anyway the difference is not going to be made by me withdrawing from GitHub, but it's more like organizing socially and politically anyway. So that's another story, but it's just that basically what we did so far on Git locally is, you know, it runs on your machine, it's only you, and Git is free and open source software, so let's say there was no disclaimer, in my opinion, to share. But when we go to the GitHub layer, which is like on the web, involves a private corporation that maybe you're sharing your email with, you know, it's a slightly different story. So I just want to be, I just want to share my my discomfort with you. But right before we do this, remember I asked you to download the data file to be able to run this Python script. So let's do it. A good practice is to make a subfolder called data. Depends on your convention, but yeah, if you're interested in project organization, like folder structure as like the first step, etc., you can ask me. I have lots of resources for you. But so that's like really one tiny piece of that vision of good project management. So now we have a data folder. And you're going to copy this CSV file into it. So and by now you should be able to run the Python script. Oh. Oh. Oh yeah, right. There's nothing in data. So what did I run before? Oh yeah, of course. So now we should work on your end too. And what do you think git status will say now? What do you expect? Does someone have an idea? Before running git status, what do you expect it to output? I didn't modify it in the script, so like here. Oh yeah. Oh sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe I modified it with respect to the version that you guys have. Sorry. So okay. Yeah, so that's another thing precisely. Okay, so let's take the two issues separately. So you guys will probably have to add this this path, change the file path over here. So please, so I'm not making it because my initial commit included it, but please make that that edit in the Python program, and then commit that change.
So Marianne, you just might want to flag that people who didn't, on Windows, who didn't install Python with an environment variable that directs to the Anaconda Python. I'm not going to get around that.
Oh yeah, right. So okay, but they can run it from Anaconda, right? When they okay. Okay. No, we are not gonna actually run Python. Yeah, no, it's. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, good to know. Yeah, yeah.
Non gli funziona Python su Git Bash.
No, dice che è normale con Windows, purtroppo. No, ma per esempio con Mac avrà bisogno di Python al command line. Sì.
Ah, ma perché si può sistemare questa cosa?
Sì, l'environment variable. Sì. Ok, so
La cerco così. No, quello sì, però forse c'è un modo per farlo funzionare.
Devi mettere, devi fargli trovare le cose dove
Vai sulla prompt e fai
Okay, so that's the instruction of what you have to do. Normally, you change the file path in the Python file. If you're completely lost, just wave your hand. Because the CSV file lives in the data subfolder. So here, oops. Here you want to add data to the file path. So that creates a change. So your working tree is not clean anymore. So you want to make it clean by adding a commit. Please run git status, everyone, so that I can see where you're at. Can I see your git status? Well, it's hard to see. Mettilo fuori, secondo me. Il zip archive. Lascialo nel downloads.
Ah, ok.
Così non c'è. E git log, che cosa fai? Ok.
No, non apro, ma qui per il web,
I think you do too well because unzipping data and stuff, that's not part of what we're doing here. Yeah.
I didn't want to.
So
What
git
should we
status,
do now?
display git status for me. Ah, okay, so you haven't finished. See, you
Yeah, I
have
to change
to.
it.
Okay, maybe it, that's the change you have to make. Yes.
I already did it. Like I changed it at a different path to CSV file.
Yeah, maybe, but what I can see is that your tree,
Did I change something?
there's
that-
something, yeah, show git diff,
see?
or git diff is
Okay.
more explicit.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
I checked the. Okay.
So,
I
yeah,
did decide.
I want you to save all the changes that are about the Python file. You can, at every step, you can say git status to check where you're at. Yeah, if you don't remember. Can I see your git status, guys, so I know where you're at?
I complete.
Git status.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, looks good. And can you display the Python script with
Okay.
cat or nano? Or
Well, I don't know if it is here. Okay.
okay. And git log? Okay. Yeah, normally, so it's, I think it's better to write verbs. You know,
Okay.
in English especially, it's very action-oriented.
Well-
So to describe what you do, you put a verb.
Okay.
Are you okay?
I've done this before. I have just written down something.
You're trying to do the, but in terms of Git, are you okay?
Yeah, I think.
Git status? It doesn't autocomplete. Okay, no, you're not good because see the.
Oh yeah, I moved this file to. Oh, I did something very stupid.
It's okay. We can.
Alt GR 9 no 5.
So I would like people to have the py file. So there's only one py file, right, at the root of the directory, to contain the proper data path. So the proper file path, data / the CSV, and this should be all saved into the history, meaning that you have done a git add and a git commit. And that we don't need to worry about it anymore. Are we good with that? So, yes.
Fix the.
Can you go one level up in the tree? No, I'm not talking about Git right now. I'm only talking about the file system. So right now you're in the data subfolder.
So I think I did
Exactly.
what I should have done.
Yes. Yes. Okay, that looks okay. Can you show me the py file with nano or cat?
No.
Sorry,
The mean
To ever
m.
add it, they normally add it here.
here.
Tab. If you press tab, it should. Oh no, it doesn't work. Okay, no, so here, see, that should start with data slash, because
Okay. No, okay.
that's what I asked to do here. Change the file path to the proper slash.
And the slash is
Yeah. And now what? How do you save that?
Control.
Yes. And now when you run git status, you see that this is not clean. So that's why I ask you to no, type it by hand. Type the commands by hand. Yes. No, git. You have to specify which file you're adding.
It's a big problem. Can I find it if I don't try and pretend I'm a batch?
It says here, see? Change is not staged for commit. Use git add file to update what will be committed.
Then I will get.
No, type it. That's how you will learn.
I'm gonna add raw. Shouldn't change anything.
Okay, I think we're there. So, for some people are not able, unfortunately, to run the Python command from the shell, which might be a problem for this afternoon. That's why we're trying to fix it now. I hope the people remote are doing okay. Feel free to add your... Yes, I don't see anything in the Etherpad chat, so I'm guessing things are under control. So now what you should have in terms of status is something that looks like this. So it's not completely clean since we are made aware of some untracked files. And indeed, in data, we have this new file that lets us run the plotting script, but that is not tracked, or at least not yet, by Git. If we wanted to start tracking it, we would go like git add data slash inflammation1 CSV. But do we really want to track it? So that's a question that's worth asking. Typically, so Git is originally made for versioning code. As I said, anything that's plain text, such as your tech source files for your papers and reports, that would make sense as well to version control them with such a system. Data, it really depends. In this case, it's a very small file. Oops. Yeah, that's like the size in bytes. So it's not like a large data set or anything. So it could be okay to save the data file alongside the code. In many scientific applications, though, maybe that's not what you want to do, and maybe you don't even have the data locally. Maybe the data lives somewhere in a warehouse or something, and you write your code on your laptop, and then you run that code on a cluster, etc. So we'll assume that, yeah, that's just data in principle. So we will not version control it. Like here locally, I'm able to run the Python script. That's great. In your other setups that might be over networks, etc., you'll run what you have to run. But generally speaking, there's no reason to version control the data files. And I'm talking files, but maybe they're like HDF5 or a file system where you cannot even talk about the data file. So in the general case, let's make this data file not part of the tracking system. So for this, we create a file that has a conventional name, touch. It's called .gitignore. Yes, yesterday, did we cover dot files? Like, not specifically, but it's so like basically files that have names that start with a dot, they're not displayed by default. So when I do ls, I don't see the gitignore file here, even though it's there. And to be able to see it, I have to add the A option. And this will give me access to the hidden files. So dot files are hidden. So the dot gitignore is here. It's empty, so its size is 0. Oh, and by the way, I see that there's a .git folder here. And, just out of curiosity, you may want to take a look at it. And basically, in that .git folder, you have all the metadata and the changes that lets Git work. And that, for example, when you display git log, that's all this information is contained in the .git folder. But it's hidden because, Git needs it, but you don't want to have it in your face. You want to focus on your work, like the content of your project. NSA, sorry. So now in the .gitignore file, I'm going to edit. So please write the same thing. .gitignore. We want to ignore do not track data. So that's going to be. And maybe I'll just even specify this. Okay, everyone following? We have created a .gitignore file where we specify everything that we don't want to track. We tell Git, okay, don't worry about these. Maybe I have them locally on my machine here, but when I work on the HPC machines, they're elsewhere, so that's not part of like the code base I'm developing, really. And now, if I go git status, so now two things have happened. One is that I don't see data / in red anymore. And the reason Git is not warning me about data not being tracked anymore is because in gitignore, which is something that Git understands, it says, don't worry about what's in data, about anything that ends in .csv, and that's in data. But gitignore itself is something that we want to add to the tracking system. So how do I, so it says here, I'm going to git add the .gitignore. Yes.
For everyone who didn't succeed running Python on your Git bash, we're typing a solution on the Etherpad. Okay. But first of all, you have to find out where your Anaconda directory is, and then we tell you how to make it work.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Is this the whole thing of gitignore effective just if we do add, or we have to do also commit?
Well, I haven't even run add yet.
Okay.
So gitignore is a file just like any other file.
Mm-hmm.
So as you see, it's effective even without adding it, because just like having created the .gitignore file and specified inside that I wanted to ignore data, it worked immediately. Data was not included anymore, so it works immediately. Except that now I also want to additionally version it because it's part of my project. It's part of my project to specify that I don't want the data files.
So then I should commit the gitignore. I shouldn't
Exactly,
ignore
yes.
the ignore.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I got a little bit lost.
Yes.
On my Gitignore file, should I write only this or there is something else?
Yeah, that's what we wrote. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I also wrote a comment, but
yeah,
the comment is not functional.
Git status, if I print git status, it's still.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, show me again the content of the gitignore. And where are you? Yeah. Leave this. ls minus a. Yeah, I don't. Can you troubleshoot him? Thank you. Okay, so one student put it in a very fun way. He said, but let's not ignore the gitignore. So that's what we're doing now. We're versioning the gitignore.
Perché al posto di aggiungere, al posto di mettere all'interno di questa cosa qua, ho copiato il codice dentro la cartella, invece dovevo cambiare.
Okay, so everything we've done so far is local. We don't need an internet connection. We are on our personal laptop or workstation at the university, but this only lives on my laptop. You cannot see it. I mean, you can only see the display with the screen, but you cannot collaborate with me directly. And also, if my laptop, if I take the bike and it's a bumpy road and my laptop fails and it breaks, maybe all this nice project with all this nice history will be lost. So it might be interesting to have a copy of, so not just my project as is, so not just the directory, but the repository, which means the directory with all its past versions somewhere that doesn't break. So for this, we'll use a web hosting service called GitHub. So let's go on GitHub and log in now that you have an account. If you don't have an account on GitHub and you haven't been able to create one yet, ask a helper to come and help you. The interface should look like this, and here, you know, I'm logged in. That's my picture. Is everyone on github.com? Okay, so here we're going to create a new repository through this web interface. And we're going to name it Inflammation as well. because basically we're going to create the place for it online, so it probably lives somewhere in the cloud, and we're going to synchronize it with what we have locally. So we want to give it the same name. In theory, I could give it like another name, but let's have meaningful names and not create unnecessary confusion. In some cases, it might make sense to have a different name for the local version and the remote version. So I'm already introducing this term, the remote as opposed to local. And here, it's also friendly for yourself and your collaborators to describe briefly what the project is. So and you're going to make this repository public. So yeah, again, just so you're aware, all this will be online and people can find you and see you and see your work. So I don't know, if you're embarrassed about it, you can always delete the repository afterwards, although it will probably live somewhere in some kind of archive. And I don't need to initialize this repository with a README because I actually have that README locally already. But alternatively, I could start actually with like this empty repository or almost empty, considering you might have a README and a git ignore online, bring it locally, make my work, and do the syncing both ways. So I'm going to create this repository. And here I have a bunch of information. And for you, it's probably like this. Are you comfortable do you use GitHub already? So I think you should follow this part. Yes. Okay, so we've already created a repository online. Do you think you can catch up with that? Yes. Well, one step, I don't think I can because, yeah, see now it already exists, but it was clicking create repository. Yes. But now I lost the nice interface. So now I cannot make this larger, I'm sorry, but the URL should be something like https github.com, your username, and the name of your repository. And even if you've never done this in your life, well, just follow the instructions, RTFM. So in our case, we're not creating a new repository on the command line because we already have a repository locally. What we're going to do is push an existing repository from the command line. So yeah, pushing is the action of like sending what you have locally to the web service. So to be able to push somewhere, you need to give the address, the location of this destination, if you like. So this is done by specifying a so-called remote. So as I said, local as opposed to remote, remote as opposed to local, I wanted to say. So when you're in a repository, you want to know what the remotes are. When you want to know what the remotes are, you run git remote minus V for verbose. Oh, and I see that no remote is specified. And that makes sense. I really just did local work. So now I'm just going to copy paste this. But I'm also allowed to think with my brain and try to decipher this. Git, so git commands start with git. Remote, we're talking about specifying a remote place. We're going to add a remote that is called origin by default. And this is where it lives, online, GitHub, this username / repository name. And then when you do git remote minus V, now you see that you do have a remote. So it's a remote that you can push to and pull from. So you push to the remote or you pull from it. And let's say, imagine that, so we've done all this project to get together like step by step, but imagine I did it by myself. Well, someone else might want to take the work from there. So in their case, they wouldn't have anything remotely. And bringing this like thing that I shared, I haven't shared it yet already, but let's say, even if it's empty, there's something there. You will do what's called a clone, bring it locally. And that's only to explain the sort of origin. It's the origin is like that remote, and you want to bring it locally and maybe add some changes, some improvements to my project, because I did it by myself, so it cannot be that great. It's always better when another set of eyes takes a look, right? So once I've added the remote, so I've specified the destination to push, I can push. So I'll copy paste this, but actually, if you're interested, you can read more about it. I will remove the U flag because I don't think it's a good habit, at least when you're learning. So adding the U flag will let you, basically afterwards, you don't have to specify the remote all the time. But I want to specify the remote all the time because I want to emphasize what we're doing. So I want to be explicit and verbose about it. So I'll just spell out that I'm pushing what's currently there. And what's currently there is basically not just those files, but all this history, right? That's the directory, and that's the repository, so basically equipped with the hidden Git folder. So let me go back up to this. So that's the remote, and that's the branch. As I said earlier, today we're not going to consider multiple branch. We're just sticking with one branch, the default one, the master one. And now I'm going to enter my credentials. And something happens, yay! So objects are being compressed, written, and oh, it's offering you to create a pull request already, but that's the same branch. And now if I refresh this page, there we go. My repository is not empty anymore because I've sent, so pushed everything I had locally online. And I have what I expect. So my plotting script is here. My README, as you say, conveniently displays here with the markdown rendering already baked in it, and the gitignore file, as I expect. And here I can navigate the commit history, in a graphical way. So, maybe if you were not, I think it's important to understand how things go by learning the command line. But, then some people prefer using GUI tools only. Someone needs help, please? So, this is cool, but, if you prefer navigating this, I respect you for sure. So, and here you can see the commit IDs in their short form. You know, as I told you, the beginning is enough to identify them. And from here, you know, you can click them to view the contents. So if I go back, for example, start documenting project. That's what I meant by, you know, I see which file is added is like, oh, okay, I see that there's the README file that appears here. I can see the parent of my commit, so like the commit previous to this one, the full commit ID. So this is a pretty friendly interface. Right? Oh, and actually, yeah, I don't know. Do you think I could show like the edit mode from the web interface and then pull it there? Sure. Yeah, yeah, because so I think it did not even exist when I started using GitHub, but and honestly, I wouldn't do it for code, but since we, for example, at the Carpentries, so the organization that brings us here, a lot of the materials are not, it's not necessarily code, it's like a template, a small web page. So yeah, for example, you know, the workshop web page, no, this is done over GitHub, but it's not really code per se. So sometimes you don't really need to like open the Jupyter notebook or programming environment or Nano, etc. So you want to make just a small edit by clicking this this icon, and you can type here live in the online editor. So let's add information. So I invite you to do it so you get some experience with like the GitHub editor. There's even default commit message. And I will commit directly. So like everything that we've done in at the command line, that's just one example of the interfaces that kind of take care of it for you. So actually, in your day-to-day work, maybe you will want to use those interfaces rather than doing everything at the command line, but be aware of what's happening behind the scenes. So I'll commit those changes. So now it's there. And here, if I go to the commits, I see one additional commit. So it's like the equivalent of git log, but in the graphical way, it's there. But of course, it's not, locally it's not there, because I haven't done any kind of syncing between the remote and the local copy. So intuitively, how do you think I will, what command should I run to get the remote changes into my local copy? That could be a good word, but specifically it's pull, because so we pushed to the remote, and now we're going to pull from the remote. So we're going to, so I'll just git log again. See, the last commit is ignore CSV data files. Now git pull origin master. Okay. I didn't have to give my password again, I guess because I'm in the same session. And you have some information already here. You know that what happened is that README received 2 additional lines. One file was changed, 2 insertions. And now if I check git log, here is my the commit I did online. So push to the remote, pull from the remote. So now we're going to try out collaboration. So you're going to have to pair with your neighbor. So make sure each of you is a pair, is part of a pair. And maybe I'll demo with, maybe I'll pair with you. What? I just need to know your GitHub account. Do you have one? Yeah, otherwise I'll ask.
I was kidding.
A comical one? Ah, it's in Japanese. Okay. Oka. Mi. Kuma is bear.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Michele. No, oops, sorry, I revealed your identity after all these efforts to hide. So since the roles are going to be different, then we'll swap. But let's say I am A and Michele is B. So in each of your pairs, you have to decide who is A, who is B, and then we'll change. But person A is going to be, let's say, was the initiator of the project. So you know, I did this work. You know, it's all me, as you can see from the history. And where are the settings again? I'm going to go into this. So only person A does it. Person A goes into the settings of this repository, goes in under collaborators, confirms the password, and adds person B. So in my case, person B is Michele. Okima, Kuma. Oh wait, maybe I misspelled. Okami. Okay, I found it. Yeah, so GitHub should find the user who is person B by auto-completion. I'm going to add them.
C'era uno che aveva un'immagine uguale alla tua, che gli è venuto fuori. Un'immagine di default, cioè di default, però ok, poco ci manca. Dovreste avere forse un
e adesso tu ricevi una mail, no?
Ah, una mail.
No,
C'è una notifica.
And so normally person B receives an email, a notification that they were added as a collaborator. And I think that you accept, right?
Yes. You go to view invitation and accept.
And person B accepts the invitation. I mean, of course, I'm not forcing you, but that's the scenario.
Okay.
Okay. Then, I don't know, maybe I should have to wait for them a little bit. Then you'll clone it, but since you already have a repository with the same name, we'll put it somewhere else. We'll put it on the desktop. So person B is my collaborator. I have to prepare my next talk at the next conference I'm going to, and I'm like, Michele, you really have to help me take the work from there, make some stuff, and then just contribute. So person B, so yeah, in theory it would be better maybe to even show your screen, but maybe I can explain out loud. So person B has received an invitation, has accepted it, and there's a green button that says clone or download. So they will visit that. They click clone or download. It's called clone with HTTPS. They click that little symbol that's copy to clipboard. So I'm spelling out what person B is doing. I'm not doing it because I'm person A. And then they go back to their terminal. They go back to the command line. Can you do it? Oh. Yeah, but you exactly, you cannot do it at the same time. So I'll write it on the Etherpad.
Okay.
Okay. So where are we? Yes. So person B has copied to clipboard the HTTPS clone link. Person B goes to the terminal and they type, they go to the desktop, let's say, and cd desktop. And they go git clone and paste what they just
I'm writing down. Okay.
and then they run git remote -v, and they should see that the address, the
I don't have.
oh, it's funny. It's weird. Why? Okay, maybe that's a convention. Normally, I would expect it to be this, you know?
Yes.
It should be this. That's weird.
I mean, there should also be this one. But,
What do people B see when they run git remote -v? I'm a little surprised by what we have with Michele, but maybe it's. I mean, we're gonna see if the push,
folder is
the push.
there.
Yeah. Okay, maybe it's just a display thing. Okay, so now the person B is going to do the work because I'm too busy preparing for my talks and getting an academic position. So person B will open, actually do the change that you like. You could even edit the Python file and change the style to ggplot style like we did yesterday. They could open the README. You're a Vim person like me. Good. Or you could capitalize average and max min, or yeah, maybe my collaborator has better styling abilities for making nice publication plots. So he's changing my Y labels, he's improving them. So please, person B, do that change. And then by now, you're used to what happens to a change set. If you want to add it to your history, you have to add it to the staging area and then commit what's in the staging area. So that's what person B is doing. Person A is busy preparing for their career.
Are you criticizing the fact I didn't do anything before I came to this course?
Not at all. I guess you hear what you like to hear. That's so funny. Yeah, so for the remote people, there was a question, but that was a total joke. It's basically Lachlan who said, are you criticizing the fact that I totally didn't do anything before coming here? So Mirko will be happy. I repeated the question, but that was a joke. Okay, are you done, Michele?
I'm done.
Okay, so now we should see it online. So now both either person A and B can check this. I don't. So you did git push origin master?
I did it now.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
My remote output.
Well, yeah. That's why I think it's weird, but we'll see what happens. So the.
No, but it's
Okay.
good.
So person B has not only added to the staging area and committed to the history stack, but they also push remotely so that otherwise it's only on his machine, and I don't have an easy. I'm like traveling, taking planes to get a career, so it's not like I can access his files that easily. So I need something online. So my collaborator, person B, has pushed git push origin master like we did previously. Oh, wonderful! And I see that the latest commit here is by person B, and it consists in, oh yeah, they've done a great contribution. This will really improve our H index, etc. No sarcasm intended. So that's great. The code is there. And what if so now, locally, if I want to keep working, I want to make sure I'm in sync with what's going on. And imagine if I had 2, 3 N collaborators. So now person A, what do you think person A will want to do? What does person A do? What do you think person A should do? There are some changes that live in the cloud that they don't have locally. Pull, very good.
But it's a command to see if there is from the terminal to see if there are changes in the origin.
So sometimes git status does it. I don't know exactly. Yeah, it would be git fetch. Except I find it a bit cryptic. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, git fetch has kind of like read what was online, but haven't applied it to. So like for now, I still, I still have only my commits. I haven't taken, yeah, because, but yeah, I don't. It has taken things from up. So actually, sometimes it tells you, when you run git status, it sees that, you're behind the origin. But, or maybe I just don't know the answer, but I would just say, just check every time. Like before resuming your work, do, in this case, though, the simple version is a git pull origin master, like we've seen. But strictly speaking, pull consists in a fetch and a merge. So fetch is kind of like taking what is in the remote, and merging is deciding that you're absorbing it in the local copy. But that's a good question. I mean, also, if you're not, so of course, if you're on a machine, on a cluster, etc., you only have access to the command line often. But on GitHub, it's very friendly to see, what the commits are, and you see that there was a recent commit by someone else. There we go. Now we're going to do a slightly different scenario because you will find it a lot out there in nature, in the real world, let's say. So this is, I think what I just showed is highly relevant in many academic contexts, with your lab mates, with a small team, etc. You have a code base that several people are using, and yeah, you just trust your friend and you see them maybe even on a daily basis. I mean, of course, you can also live on different continents, but if you know them in person, even better, you just add them as a collaborator, and it works seamlessly like that. But for anything that's maybe a little more formal, or for big projects, for example, we've seen, we've used Matplotlib and Pandas yesterday. Well, if you have something really great as an enhancement, something to contribute to the Matplotlib project or the Pandas project, even if it's great, it's not like you're gonna be able to just like add that code, right? Which makes sense. There's a gatekeeper. So this notion of gatekeeper, so instead of just pushing to the remote that's origin, there's going to be your remote, which is your personal stuff where you do everything that you want because it's only your code. And there's going to be the gatekeeper version that usually has, we name this remote upstream. And ideally, you know, if all changes are accepted, etc., you can keep all these three things in sync. So by three, I'm thinking the local copy where you do the work, etc., the origin remote, which is like your personal GitHub account, and the upstream remote, which is the gatekeeper version. So let's say the official Matplotlib project or the Pandas project. So you have this triangle where, you know, you can pull from upstream, but you're not allowed to push because that would be a mess. You're completely allowed to push to your own remote, so origin. And you can also pull, but typically you want to pull the changes from others. So you will pull from upstream, push to origin, which is your account. So github.com/your username and, you know, Matplotlib or Pandas. And then to suggest, to propose those changes or your contributions to the gatekeeper people, you will do what's called a pull request. So again, that would be nice to draw it. But in this triangle, you've understood that you work locally on your machine. Sorry for the remote people, I'm hand representing what I'm saying. Push to origin. Origin, so all this happens at the GitHub level. So we'll do it in a visual way. I mean, graphical, through the GitHub web interface. From your personal account, you'll be able to do a pull request to the gatekeeper or the upstream remote. And then as the project goes on, and including perhaps your changes that are accepted, hopefully, then you can pull back into the local copy to be in sync and to keep working and using the up-to-date version. So let's do this now, maybe the other way around. So let's imagine, so we're different people now. We are in a different scenario, and Michele is an authority. So unfortunately, he will not just allow me as a I'm like, oh, please, can I work with you? But he's not like, oh, sure, I'm adding you as a collaborator. He's being really safe, really conservative. So actually, he has a project. Oh, well, actually, do you have it? No. Ah, okay, so I have to change collaborators. Who can be the authority? Anyone with the repository online?
I think I have some.
No, but like one of the students.
Okay.
So who? Can someone give me their username? Someone who is person B. Who is?
Gianluca.
Così?
Capital G. 1888.
Thank you. Okay. So since Gianluca is an authority, he's not approachable or anything, all I can do is fork his project. So now I'm not cloning directly because I wouldn't be able to push there. I'm going to fork it under my name. So maybe you would have, I have all these organizations that I belong to, but you should have only, so that person A, person A have to do this with, actually, so since it's spelled differently, it has cloned it without any problem. In your case, if you have, it will probably be called inflammation-1, so that to not to mix up with your original inflammation. So person A has forked the repository, which is one of an authority, the gatekeeper. And now it's all good because it's my own fork. So this I can clone because I'll be able to push there. So I do the same procedure. I go to clone or download, copy to clipboard, and I go to the desktop to be somewhere else. And I clone it. And I CD into it. And I display the remotes. So I only have the default, so again, see, origin kind of bears its meaning here. So online, I have my remote origin here under my account. And what I want to add to the framework this authority, the gatekeeper. So I'm going to, so we've seen the start of this command already, to add a remote, we go like git remote add. And now it's not going to be called origin, it's going to be called upstream. So again, for real, that's a nickname. So I could call it Gianluca, I could call it somewhere else, but I'm showing you a very conventional standard workflow, because you'll find it a lot in the SciPy community and elsewhere. And to get the URL without any typos, I go back to the gatekeeper repository. So the repository of person B in our scenario. And here I copy clipboard this thing. And now when I run git remote -v, I have 2 remotes. I mean, each is available for both fetch and push, but they're the same rate. So now, let me make some changes myself. Oops, I'll open README. And I'm gonna add, oh yeah. Actually, that's a real life experience, like in established projects, let's say. I'm not a major contributor at all, but very humbly, you know, when I try to get set up, I usually run into a slight, I don't know, edge case or exception, or I spot a typo, so I contribute my updates to the setup instructions, and I'm thinking that can always help the next person, especially a newcomer, even as a user. So it's like, you know, it's not like I'm a developer of Pandas or anything, but if I spot a little something in the setup that didn't work for me, you might as well share. So like setup, if running, let's try and say something that makes sense though. Oh, actually, can we say a sentence about what you're just working out right now for the Windows people? So I'll write for the Windows people. How do you have to run the Python script? You have to go to Anaconda. Oh no, you have to add an environment variable. Okay, for the Windows people, think about adding the environment variable. No, but seriously, that, you know, that's like a contribution that can be valuable. And that's like a realistic scenario, because it's like typically a big project, so where, you know, I'm not a collaborator because I don't know the people in person, but I fork their project. I have my own remote for it, and I can add this. So people A do the same thing. Now git diff, git status, as usual, I always want to keep track of where I'm at. So I indeed want to add this line from the README file. Git diff staged, git status. I want to commit to it So give setup. Let's see. Help Windows users with setup. And now, so these changes exist locally. I want to share them with the world. So I want to push them online. And, you know, what if I tried pushing directly to Gianluca, who is the authority? We can always try. So I'll try it. Oh, okay. Excuse me. I hope I have the HTTPS thing set up. Sorry. It used the SSH version because that's what I normally use. So I should have clicked this. Real life. Good. Remote RM. Okay, so I'll re-add it and are you sort of following what I'm doing? Okay. So I want to push. I'm so proud of my changes. I just want to like push them to Gianluca's repo. Aha! Permission to Gianluca denied to me. And that's because he didn't add me as a collaborator. And maybe he shouldn't, indeed. So I cannot repeat the workflow that we just did previously, Michele and I. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wisely push to origin, so to my remote. People A, do this. So then online, I should see a new commit. Oh, there we go. My commit is there. And Gianluca, I think I have to do it on his end. I'm going to create a pull request. No, first, maybe I'll do it on my end. Usually it prompts magically, so so to be able to propose my changes to Gianluca, I have to do a pull request. So I click new pull request. And here, see, it's all specified. So for now, we're not talking about branches. In your future life, you will probably encounter them. But basically, the head is my repo. And I want to submit, see, like the direction of the arrow. I would like this to go into Gianluca, if he allows. So I can triple check all this. But yeah, that's indeed what I want to do. So these are my changes. Visually displayed, it's very clear. I want to create the pull request. And here I want to be very polite, etc. And I can tag Gianluca. Yes. I thought this could help a few folks. Okay. And now I create this pull request, and Gianluca should receive a notification. And then what he's going to do is he's going to review, it's called reviewing my pull request. He's going to see what this is about, and he's going to see if that makes sense. If it's code, you can run tests to see that the changes, don't break your tests. So do you like it? What do you think about my proposal?
I like it.
Okay, so I have to look at your screen to be able to speak it out loud. Yeah, so see, it's almost like it's a social media, kind of, at this point, right? So you can share, tag people, like, etc. See, for example, you can add a smile from here. You can say +1 if you like it, or a heart. You can like it. So I like to promote a bit of etiquette online. So, for example, you want to write, but did you really check the code? So like here you see that's the conversation, the social part, but there's commit to see, okay, because my pull request could consist in several commits, right? Maybe I have 2 change sets. And then you go like file change. All the B people try to do this, right? So you navigate the pull request interface and you see that, okay, you check my English, maybe I made a typo, etc. Go back to conversation, and if all is fine, but well, you can tell me, you're like, thanks for your contribution, and you're very friendly and welcoming. So write that. And this is actually markdown syntax. So you can even see the rendering here. So you could add some links, like hyperlinks. You could put some code. So if you want to type preview, well, here it's plain text. But let's say you could make it bold. Make write thanks. Thanks that you can put between.
Use this maybe.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Otherwise, double star. You can. But yeah. Okay. See double star and preview. See that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then you can comment. Nice. I mean, you can write whatever you like, but you can click comment then. This one? When you're happy.
Yes. Oh, comment. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the social part, and then the functional part. See, you have this big red, green button, merge pull request. So click it. For now, we'll just keep the default. Confirm. Yeah. Sorry. And on my end, I'm going to be so happy that my change was accepted. I feel useful on this planet. Yay! And yeah, so it's merged. So now I go back locally. And I sync up. So anyway, and before I start or I restart working, yes?
Yeah, I just missed the part on which the way I have to do the pull request. Can I do it on the bash or do I have to do it on?
That's a good question. No, so like my invisible drawing is that the pull request happens at the GitHub level. So imagine like a surface line, like it's the ocean. So below the surface is like all your local stuff that nobody sees. But everything that's remote, so the gatekeeper, Gianluca in my case, and your fork, they live in GitHub world, which is above the surface. So it's all online. So you cannot do this in the terminal, you do it online.
So basically, the canonical step is to upload the changes to the fork and then from the fork request.
Exactly.
Pull request to the
where the term you're absolutely right in the concept, but the term is you push to your fork, and then from this fork online, you create the pull request into the gatekeeper repo. Yeah. Yeah. So and now I'm going back below the surface. I'm diving into the terminal again. And I'm doing this because maybe the project is evolving, and indeed the change in this case is that my contribution has been merged, but it could have been even like plenty of other contributions that are merged. So before I ever start working, so I make sure that I'm in a clean state. I haven't started hacking on a different file, etc. I want to get the changes from where? Well, no, origin, it's somewhere I pushed and well, nobody works on my origin except if I had a collaborator, but then that's not mix the two workflows. So I want to get the changes from the gatekeeper project, right? And indeed, you see that something has happened. Git log, now there's, so that was my latest change, the work I did. And now there's an extra commit, which is the merge. Which in itself, you know, it's not like functionally nothing has changed, but you know, I want to be in sync with whatever happened. There might be merges of other stuff that actually add code or differences. And you don't have to do it, but just to complete the triangle that I sketched invisibly, I would push to origin master, so that even the online version of my work is in sync. But really, it's not. I mean, there's no like functional need for it. And this is it. Feel free to stick around if you have setup issues. If you have questions about Git and GitHub, I'm here. Yeah, but yeah, so really conceptually, it's important to remember that there's what happens under the surface, so locally, where you do your work, your changes, then you select how you want to organize the tracking, git add, git commit, and then git push if you want to save all this online. And then when we're talking about collaborating to an existing project, the proposal of your changes you can do with this web interface, GitHub, and that's like above the surface. So this, you're not in the terminal anymore, you're in the web browser pressing buttons to propose files, file changes. And then when you want to resume working below the surface, then you ensure that you sync your local copy with the gatekeeper project. Or in the case with like a small collaboration where everyone is allowed to push, etc., you just pull from origin because it's the only remote in that case. But there are these two ways of collaborating. But you can also have Git just for yourself and never collaborate, and it still has value to have this like history of changes. Yeah. Yeah, we're done. I'm just not kicking anyone out or anything, but yeah.
Okay. When do we want to start again? Do we really believe we can do this in an hour? I don't know what our plan is, but my guess is not. Something faster than yesterday, probably?
Yeah, we have an option.
Okay.
Okay, so let's meet in an hour exactly. We'll aim for that.
Go for 1:15.
Okay, just to be safe.
The ad's like 8
Okay.
minutes. Safety. Okay, before you go, for the Windows guys, I need that you guys, so for the afternoon, I need that you guys can run Python from inside Git Bash.
Actually, did you manage to do everything on Git Bash?
Yes.
Okay, because I have another solution to transport everything on Conda prompt.
Alright, no, I don't want to do that.
No, thank you.
So I want everything running on Git, I need Python running on Git Bash. And then I also need that if you write anyway. Can I quickly write on?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Can I just write on?
Absolutely, yeah.
I need that if you write onto your computer.
Oh,
where's W?
it's a French keyboard,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Where's the double dash? Like dash.
Here, 6.
Cosa fai scrivi main?
So I need that if you run make version, you get something that starts with GNU make 4 point something. If you don't get that, on the Etherpad, I have some story about how you can get it to most probably run. Wrong one. Where's our Etherpad? Here.
Should you say it in the microphone?
Probably, but I've started without, so I'm probably not going to have without. I need you to follow these instructions to try and get make to work, essentially. I uninstalled everything on my Surface last night to get to like a computer that I think you guys should have, and I got that to work. So I hope that it works for you guys too. If it doesn't, I'll try and be back X minutes earlier, where X is, depends on where we go for lunch. And we can try and get it to run and spend the first 20 minutes if we have to getting it.
Because, I mean, we set up on his laptop to run everything on Anaconda prompt. But
does make work?
It works everything.
Okay.
Everything
okay.
works.
If that works, that's
just with 3
totally
installations.
Okay. Okay. Oh, what
you just have to install Bash, Nano, Make, and Git.
Oh, is that easy?
But everything with Conda. I mean, Conda install, Git, Conda install, Nano, and stuff like that, and you get everything set up on Anaconda prompt. I wrote everything on the Etherpad before.
Where?
Up. Let's go. If you go slightly up.
With my crazy mouse. Yeah, because I don't think I have double.
Excuse me. Could you please add these hints written on the header part?
Yes, there are.
Where are they?
If you go up here, this is important for using Make, Bash, Git, Nano, and Python together on Windows.
Can I put that under mine so it looks like they're together?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can do it for